Hello, it's Steve here from Mad About Hoovers, and this next video is going to explain how we go about stripping down and cleaning the Miele Turbo Brush heads. What we've got on most Miele, if it's a turbo brush, it's going to be the STB-205 or the Turbo Comfort, or the cat and dog head, it can also sometimes be known as. Basically it's supplied on some models or can be bought separately, and it's an air driven turbo brush which basically makes the job of getting pet hairs and fluff off carpets an awful lot easier than using their standard head. Now also Miele do supply this as well, which is the STB-101, also known as the Turbo Mini. That can also come on the cat and dog brush too. So basically both of these will not work forever without being stripped down and cleaned from time to time. And what I'm going to show here is basically, it's rather a simple method of stripping these down and giving it a clean out. So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to open the brush up. So we've got a screwdriver under these two yellow screws and remove the bottom plate, and again now we can see the mess and the dirt in here. I mean, this isn't too bad, but some of them can be really bad. So remove that. Let me just see now, I think it looks like we're going to be on a Torx again. Is it a Torx 20? No, it isn't. So we need to find out first of all what kind of Torx screw we have in here. Possibly a T10 by the looks of things. It is a T10, so basically we're going to be removing a T10 screw in here, one in here, one here and one here. Okay. Right, that's all 4 screws loosened off. Turn it over. And then gradually we can work out the lid off the turbo brush. Okay, I'm going to turn it over and drop the remaining screws out to the bottom. Now we've got 3 here, we just need to find one more, wherever that one's located. It's in this other hole here. And I always like to knock them through so that they don't fall out and get lost. So that's 4 screws removed. That's basically your lid taken off. You've got the air valve in the top there. Sometimes that can get a bit congested inside, so that might need a hoover out in there. And again, a hoover out inside this part as well, where the 2 holes are. But again, this one isn't too bad. So basically now we've got our brush roll. Inside here is the belt drive. So what we need to do is we need to undo 2 more screws here, which are again a T10. 1, 2. That will then allow us to remove the top of the turbo unit housing, basically. Remove that off the top, and then we're left with the access then to the turbine here, and there's your belt there. So what we want to do now basically is these are your 2 bearings. You've got one here and one here, and they just lift out. So you lift up on these 2 white bearings vertically, so your whole elbow will come out with the turbo attached, and that doesn't come off. Basically that's a complete unit there. Okay, so obviously your two bearings, two sleeve bearings will come off. So you've got 1, 2, and that will leave then basically with the what do they call this here now, the sprocket. You've got one, where's that gone now, one tiny little washer there which came off here, so remove that and don't lose it, that goes there. So what you need to do now is you need to get a screwdriver, you can find one here, and you need to get into this gap here, making sure that all hairs or anything that are wrapped around that are removed. The same goes to that side there. Again, this is fairly clean because I've got quite short hair and there's no long haired people in this house. Also check underneath here to make sure you haven't got any hair wound around that part there between the pulley sprocket and the housing of the turbine there. Again, that's all nice and clean. You're going to make sure that it spins nice and freely. I mean, it doesn't really matter about lubricating this because that, as I say, is an elongated hole there, and it's the same that side, so as long as it's clear of dirt, that's the main thing. Make sure your turbine's nice and clean. Okay, and as I say, you can't strip it down further than that point there. Now what we need to do is basically we need to pop out this and this. They will lift out of here, revealing the two sleeve bearings, one this end, one in this end, and there we can see in here basically there's a lot of build up of pet hair because that's from my cat. I mean, it hasn't been this long since I last stripped this down, so it isn't actually too bad, but some of these can get really filthy inside here to the point where it literally won't turn anymore. Okay, so we're going to lift this up here and we're going to lift this up at this end, and they both snap off and your turbo brush comes off with them. Remove them, one there and one the other end. They just pull out basically, so that leaves you with your spindle here and there, and you want to check inside those holes to make sure there's no detritus inside here, and again inside there. It should be possible to remove the cover by snapping it open like so. That will come off. Again, make sure that all the crap and dirt and build up is removed from the belt guard, which it is. Take your belt off and you examine your belt, make sure there's no damage or anything to it. Again, it's a tough belt on here. Very similar type of belt to the what they use on the Sebo X4, that is. Just a standard toughed belt. It's supposed to be a lifetime belt, so that shouldn't ever really have to break. It's not a stretch belt. So then what we're going to get is we're going to find that usually wrapped around this brush are going to be a fair few threads and fibres and bits of carpet and pet hair and people's hair and you name it. So we need to remove all those from the brush roll and any crap as well. Very easy on this one because it isn't too bad, but again we want to make sure that it's nice and clean like so before we put it back together. There we go. Make sure there's no tufts of bristles missing, because if they start to drop out then usually it's not too good. I've got one of those heads where there's about 3 of these 3 holes on here where these are missing, so they do actually are known to fall out. Right, we'll just get a vacuum cleaner on this part here because this seems to be the worst bit on mine. Get it all hoovered out, make sure it's all nice and clean in there. Obviously you don't really have to wash these, you can if you wanted to, but I just hoover them out. Like that, basically. Oh, and I'll do the sole plate as well, because they tend to get rather grubby. There we go. Now what I would normally do at this stage now, I would normally stick a little tiny bit of spray grease, which is that, on each of the spindles. One in there, and one in there. And we need to basically position the brush roll in front of the head here, so you've got it on the right side. Put our belt back over. Like so. And get our belt cover. And just make sure basically fits in there nice and easily. You've got to make sure that it goes together that way up. So you've got your C-shape housing here and the little pip that goes into it, so that needs to be on the bottom as far as I can remember. I don't normally take all this off, you see, so I'm just doing it for the sake of stripping it all down. So that goes back round the brush roll and click shut. Right, so then we would put our end bearings on. Now again, we need to make sure we've got them the right way round. So we've got the one on the one end and one on the other end. Put one into the brush roll and the other one into the brush roll. And then we want to clip them, one into the one end and one into the other end. If it doesn't feel right, then swap them the other way around, but I think they're actually the same, so it doesn't really matter which end they go in, to be honest, but I'll soon find out, because it wouldn't go back together if I was wrong. Make sure that's back in its housing here. So there's our belt now ready for the turbine to go back in. So same process again. What we're going to do is we'll make sure obviously that those are nice and clean. We're going to put a little tiny bit of grease inside there. This obviously it foams up, so it looks like I'm putting a lot in, but I'm only putting a small amount in. We don't want to put too much grease in, because if it gets inside here it's going to make a mess of the turbine. A tiny little bit inside there to lubricate the sleeve bearings. Okay. So the way these go in is that way round. Okay, so you're going to be putting them in, that's vertically, not that way. They always go in that way. You wouldn't be able to fit them in that way anyway, because they only go in one way around. So we've got our little tiny washer, if you remember that from earlier, and we slide that back over the spindle there. Put the bearing back on. Put the bearing on the other end. And then we're going to put the belt back round it, back over the pulley spindle. And then we are going to put our pulleys, our bearings, slide them back in, this end first, and then the other end. Like so. So then you're to this point here, so we see the bearings are pushed back in, both sides. The turbine spins, make sure when the turbine spins that it's turning the brush roll at the same time, so you know your belt's hooked up properly to your spindle. There is no belt tensioning to be doing with this, because it's all done automatically when you put it back together. We're making sure that our housing is back together. That's right. And then hopefully when we put the top back on, we should find out whether we've done it right or not, because if we haven't, that won't go back on properly. One, two. Okay, and that's basically, once it's dropped on, you should have no gap here and no gap in there either, because if there's a gap there, you haven't done it quite right. So you're making sure that, again, that can go up and down very, very easily, like so. It's not jammed or anything. And we're going to put these 2 screws, one there and one back in there. Okay. One. 2. Again, make sure it's still nice and loose and can go up and down. Your screws are nice and tight, not over tightened. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the hood back on. Basically, just slide it back onto the top. Gently does it. Sometimes it can get a little bit of fettling to get it back on. That's it. Once it's on, it drops on nicely. You haven't got to force it. If you have to force it, you're doing something wrong. It'll just slide onto the top, and when it's all lined up with the bearing carriers inside here, it'll drop straight down. So then we turn it back over and we put our 4 screws back in. One there, one there, one there, and one there. One, 2, 3, 4. And now what we want to do is finally to put our sole plate back on. So again, it's a case of having to rock it back on. You want to make sure these lugs here on the side engage with these 1, 2, 3, 4 holes on the front of the floor head first before you push it back down. There we go. No, that's not quite right. That hasn't gone on. So again, we need to just fettle it now until we get it. There we go. And if it hasn't quite gone in, you need to make sure it has. These can be a bit fiddly. There we go, that's got it. And then we can tighten back up our yellow screws. 1, 2. Be gentle with that as well. When you're using a screwdriver, because it's very, very easy to make a mess of these. You can use a coin to do that. Make sure again that your rubber strip is all nice and clean as well underneath there. And then make sure that the brush roll will move backwards and up and down inside. What we could also do, because sometimes these have a habit of being rather noisy, these wheels, when they spin round, the front ones as well. Now I'm not going to do it on this because last time I used this I greased these, but what you can do is to put a tiny little bit of grease on that axle, that one and that one, just a very, very small amount, and make sure you wipe the excess off so that these spin round without causing any noise, because this forehead in the past has been very noisy when I've pulled it backwards and forwards on carpets due to there being no lubrication or not enough lubrication on these wheel bearings here. So at the moment there's enough on, because it's not been long since I last did this, but you can put a little bit of grease on those axles. So now we'll just plug it back into the cleaner and make sure that it works. Works lovely, that does work a treat. Okay, so that is the turbo brush there, that's the floor brush. Now the other one you've got basically is the STB-101, which is this one here. This is what they call the Mini Turbo Brush. Now this one here, you're very limited really in what you can do with it, because it doesn't really disassemble very easily. I wouldn't really recommend taking these right apart because they're a bit of a swine. So all you need to do with this, all you can do with this really, it's not as easy as that one. You just open this up, press that little button there, making sure that that is lined up with that there, that T shape, that little peg. So you're going to slide this down. You press that knob and pull it down. That enables you to angle it up like so. Okay, so you're able then from that point to get access. It's very, very similar inside to that one over there, except angling it up gives you access to the turbine. Okay, so what you can do from here is to, like that one there, you can remove the bearings, take note in which way they're going, again, as it was before, vertically. So we can take these out by squeezing the sides together and lifting, and they will lift out. You can remove the bearings from the ends, like so, and then remove the turbine like this. So what we're looking for basically is anything that's wrapped around these spindles, such as cat hairs or any kind of debris that's wrapped around this spindle, because we need to be pulling that off. There's not a lot on here because I do keep these serviced myself, but you need to make sure that those spindles, especially this one here, yeah, that's okay, make sure they're clean of debris. And also these bearings, you're going to have a look at each one of these bearings and make sure that's all nice and clean, because we're going to put a little bit of grease on those afterwards there. Those are your turbine bearings. Now it's not really possible, well I'd imagine it is, but I've never really stripped this down any further than this, because they can be a real pain to try and put back together again. I think I tried it on one of the riser visor ones from Electrolux, and then I broke it trying to get it back together. So the best thing really is just to make sure that you haven't got loads of hairs wrapped around the ends of the brush rolls here and here. If that's tight in there, the only way would be to obviously try and take it to pieces, but I really wouldn't unless you absolutely have to, because I would imagine it's probably quite easy to snap these or break them. It's only been designed to open up like this for servicing. So if your belt snaps really, you've got a bit of a problem then, because then in order to replace that you've got to take the brush roll out, and these aren't designed to be able to get them open to remove the brush roll. So it might be in that case easier just to buy another one. I mean, these are what, 20, 30, 35 pounds. You can get these in Argos anyway. But they're relatively cheap. I mean, you can see in here there's a lot of build up inside there, so what we need to do is to scrape that all out. So if I get a little brush, and you get your brush like this, and you get it into the little crevices there, and you can see all this, how that's built up inside the fan housing there. So we need to get the hoover again and get all that out of there. Where's the dusting brush gone? There we are. Okay, so it's a little bit fiddly, a little bit tricky when you can't open it up all the way. But what happened there was when I was hoovering that, vacuuming that out, is the actual, this part came out as well. So you need to be careful with that you don't suck that up into your cleaner. I should have explained about that first. That basically is very important because it won't work without it. That's actually the part there, this hole, where the dirt comes through. Yeah, literally that is how small the dirt gap is. And that actually fits. Let's just see. Have I got that in right? Does that go in that way? No, it goes in that way. So yes, that actually fits. Yeah, just in here. So that hole will pull out like so. So if that is dirty underneath there, you can pull that out and clean underneath it. But don't suck that up or lose it, because you'll be sorry if you do. It won't work without this. So we're going to now try and get to the threads on the brush roll, which is a little tiny bit tricky to do. You just got to get your fingers down in there and pull the threads off the brush roll, making sure that it's nice and free. Another one here. They are very fiddly to get the brush roll clean, these, but you can do it. If necessary, we'll have to use the pliers. There is actually a little ridge that runs along the brush roll. I don't know how well that light will catch that, but just along here there's a ridge that goes all the way down, and they say what you're supposed to be able to do is to get a pair of scissors like that and go along that ridge and snip it all the way down like so, and that will basically be the same on the other side. There's another ridge there, so you get your scissors and go, and then that will enable you to pull all the hairs and the debris from off that brush roll. But that needs to be clean. It needs to be made sure that there is no debris built up along this gap here. You need to get down in there, make sure that's clear, and also that gap at the top of the brush roll there, make sure that's clear as well. Okay, so now we can put this back in. It'll only go in one way, like that. It's not really possible to put it in the other way, because you can tell that isn't right. It'll go in with the curved edge facing towards you, like that. Right, so now we want to put a little tiny bit of grease in these end bearings here. Not a lot, just a small amount of grease. Or you could use 3-in-1 oil, but a very, very small amount. That's enough. If you put too much oil in there, it'll make a hell of a mess inside here, so just enough. So now what we need to do is we need to put it back in. First of all, we line the spindle onto the belt like so. Then we put our bearing on. Again, keep it vertical like this. It won't fit like that, it's got to go like this. Same on the other side. So that will go on the spindle. And then what we're looking to do is to push those down into here, vertically on. Put them vertical, push it in, and on this side vertical again, push it in until it clicks. You might have to squeeze the sides together slightly to get it to go in and click. There we go, that's gone in. So what we're looking for basically is for it to be like that. And now what I've noticed here now is that that belt has now come off that spindle.